Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. And in today's video, this is going to be me preparing for my political science presentation class. My presentation that I was talking about with another group member of mine, talking about HR 4000, the Fair Representation Act. I know I haven't been posting videos recently, so I decided to give you guys some filler content for a while until my college semester is over and I can get back to making content for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. I'm talking about HR 4000, the Fair Representation Act. So a bit of background on this bill. The bill was introduced on July 25th, 2019 during the 116th Congress. It was sponsored by Donald S. Baer, a representative of Virginia's 8th Congressional District. And the main reason for him sponsoring this bill is that he ultimately believes that Congress is very dysfunctional, very divided. Our leaders have no incentive to want to work together towards societal greater good. And that's why one of the reasons why he sponsored this bill, because he believes that Congress is broken. We really need to shake up the system and foster a government where our leaders are more incentivized to work with each other, to find common ground, to stay positive, stick to the issues, encouraging a more substantive debate. And that's one of the reasons why he has drafted the Fair Representation Act. And this goes even further on some of the current issues towards our current electoral system. Like we may argue that we have a serious problem in this country with partisan gerrymandering, with money in politics. Well, that's only a very small issue. Yes, it is a problem nonetheless. Partisan gerrymandering, money in politics, that is a problem nonetheless. But we also have a problem with districting. Because personally, what Fair Vote advocates for is that single-member winner-take-all districts has ran its course. It's one of the reasons, one of the areas to blame about our electoral system, because it has produced zero-sum warfare in our elections, because parties and candidates are more incentivized to appeal to the extreme ideologues of their base, and candidates are in which they can ignore the will of a majority of voters and still win, meaning they can, at least thanks to first past the post voting, candidates can literally just garner 20 or 30 or 40% of the vote and still win a congressional district in Massachusetts or in Arkansas and West Virginia. And it's quite absurd, actually, because not everyone voted for Democrats in Massachusetts. Not everyone voted for a Republican in Arkansas. There are Republican voters in Massachusetts. There's a Republican governor there. There's a lot of Democrats in Kentucky. There's a Republican governor. There's a Democratic governor there. We know there's a Republican governor in Maryland, but yet Republicans they only get at best one seat when they should be getting at least 2 seats. And single-member winner-take-all districts is really one of the blame, because when you have small congressional districts that only elect a candidate who wins the most votes, you're going to have polarized winners, and you're going to have huge swaths of the country feeling underrepresented. And we see that play out in Massachusetts. 9 House seats. The most recent election in 2020, all those 9 House seats were won by the Democratic Party. Yes, but we may know that might seem that everyone voted for the Democrats in Massachusetts. Well, not necessarily, because there was other voters who supported Republican candidates. But because of winner-take-all elections with winner with the most votes, then the candidate who gets the most votes in all those districts still win, and the Democrats are apparently are the reason, and because they get the most votes, they can win all the 9 House seats, and it feeds cynicism. It discourages. It leads to disengagement in our electoral system, and it leads to a lot of frustrated voters. And it's one of the reasons why we're so divided, because politicians can literally ignore the will of most voters and still win. It still leads to it leads to very disproportional results, and also only the majority faction in that region, the country, will be underrepresented, will be overrepresented, and the other side will be underrepresented, which is not right. We should hear the voices of everyone in this country. Congress should reflect the diversity. They should be the descriptive branch of our government, because they're supposed to be hearing the voice. They are a legislature. Things take time to legislate and pass public policy. And with winner-take-all elections, it really has discouraged our leaders to want to compromise and want to reach out and form coalitions with others. And that's really the biggest issue towards our electoral system. And this affects Democrats because of winner-take-all rules. They can't get a Democrat. You can't get a Democrat elected to represent Wyoming, to represent South Dakota, North Dakota, Idaho, because they only cover smaller pockets, and they have a very small voter base where they can't get the most votes. And honestly, the only way for them to get the most votes is that the Republicans split the vote if a third party candidate gets in there and splits the Republican vote, and the Democrat wins, and it still ignores the will of a majority of voters. So in that regard, winner-take-all elections has ran its course, and that's why Stephen Baer, the Fair Representation Act, CalRCV, the coalition that I'm a part of, working towards advancing ranked choice voting all across the state of California, supports the Fair Representation Act and supports proportional representation to elect members of Congress. So there are three things that the Fair Representation Act would do. Firstly, it would drastically change the way we vote for members of Congress, for representatives and senators. It would establish the use of preferential voting, or in other words, ranked choice voting, or in other words, alternative voting, or to be used for like multi-seat or multi-winner elections. That's also called single transferable vote. And the difference with ranked choice voting towards our the voting system that we've used for decades, which was first past the post voting, that has a huge history. It comes from the notion of horse racing, the horse that reaches horse riding or horse racing, and the first horse that reaches the first passes the post wins, even if it's very close. If it's the first person that passes the post, then he wins either way. And that's where the term first past the post voting, and we've used it for decades actually, and it really has. It may have seemed seemed very radical at first, very a good thing for a democracy, but now it has really ran its course, and we need a new electoral system that achieves proportional representation, and to ensure that every voter counts, every voter has a voice in our government, and that their vote will actually mean something in return. So with ranked choice voting, instead of voting for one candidate, you get to rank the candidates in order of preference. You rank your favorite candidate as number 1, your second choice candidate as number 2, your third choice candidate as number 3, your fourth choice candidate as number 4, your fifth choice candidate as number 5, and your sixth choice candidate will always be at the bottom of your ranking. And how the counting process works, usually with multi-winner RCV and single-winner RCV elections, is that we first count all voters' first choices. And under like instant runoff voting or alternative vote, if a candidate has 50% or more of the first choice votes, then that candidate wins. But if no one breaks the 50% threshold, which usually happens when there's so many candidates in the race, that's when we move over to the instant runoff, where the candidate with the fewest amount of first choice votes will be eliminated, and his voters that selected him as number 1 will have their next choices counted. And the process keeps continuing until one candidate has 50% of the vote. But this works differently with proportional representation or single transferable vote used for multi-winner elections, but I'll get to that in an upcoming slide. So Another thing that it would do is that it would require states to establish independent redistricting commissions to fairly draw the lines. And as well, states with more than one representative will be required to establish multi-member congressional districts up to 5 members each. It would be the first real move towards proportional representation for members of Congress. And I'll get to this in a later slide, but it would bring back a sense. It would allow Republicans to be able to elect a representative from Massachusetts. It would allow a Democrat to elect someone from Idaho or Louisiana or Arkansas even, or Mississippi or Alabama or Tennessee more often, South Carolina. It would open up our politics to more people, and combining this with ranked choice voting, it would incentivize our leaders to form coalitions, to want to work together, to pursue societal goals, to make our country a better place for all Americans, where everyone has a seat at the table on policy, on issues that we care about the most. And that's what democracy is, in my opinion: forming coalitions, and also cooperating to be able to form a governing. To be able to increase your governing mandate, to be able to pass your agenda, to be able to pass any legislation. So those are the three principles that the Fair Representation Act would do. Is that it would establish the use of ranked choice voting. It would require states to establish independent redistricting commissions, and it would also lead to the creation of multi-member districts up to 5 members each. So states like Massachusetts would no longer have 9 single-member congressional districts. They would have 3 multi-member districts that elects 3 members each. Louisiana would be the same. Would be differently. Louisiana, with its 6 representatives, they would have 2 districts that both elect 3 members each. And with the system is that it would better reflect the overall. It would foster proportional representation and allow for minor parties and minority representation to be heard in our Congress, which is a great thing. It fosters more substantive debate and really encourages our leaders to form coalitions with their base, but also looking beyond their base. To ensure that every voter has a voice in our government. So how would this policy work overall? As you may know, there is 2 different types of ranked choice voting: alternative vote or instant runoff voting that is used for single winner elections, and then there's another type of ranked choice voting which is called single transferable vote, which aims to achieve proportional representation. It's used for multi-winner elections. That's where multi-member districts come in. Single transferable vote will be used for multi-member districts. But 6 states such as Wyoming, Alaska, North Dakota, South Dakota, Vermont, and Delaware that only have 1 representative would still be elected using alternative vote or ranked choice voting. And the winner with 50% of the votes will be your local representative, will be your single local representative. But because under the rules that would lead to the creation of multi-member districts, that's where single transferable vote comes in. And with the act, what STV does is that it leads to it's still similar to ranked choice voting in regards towards you rank your candidates in order of preference, pretty much 1, 2, 3, however you like the candidates in order of your preference. You're free to vote your conscience, and then you get a series of backup choice to ensure that your vote isn't wasted. And that's really that's very similar to alternative vote, and another similarity to alternative vote with single transferable vote. It still has vote eliminations. The candidate with the fewest amount of support is eliminated, but it has another type of transferring votes It has another type of transferring vote. It has surplus votes where so. Unlike alternative vote where you need 50% of the vote to get elected in the public office, under STV, you just need a required quota. And this quota really varies based on the number of seats to fill. The larger, how if a district has like 5 or 9 or like 9 seats, and under like a 9-seat STV election, you would just need 11% of the vote to get elected into public office. Or if you have 5 members each, you would just need around 20% of the vote. If you have a 7-member district, you would just need 14% of the vote. So how you really calculate to get your quota is that you take the total number of votes cast in that election and you divide it by the number of seats to fill plus 1, and then it will give your quota. So under a 5-member district, you would need around the quota would be 20% of the vote. So in order for a candidate to win in a 5-member district, they would just need 20% of the vote, and if one candidate has fewer votes and is in last place and doesn't garner enough support to be able to stay in the running and to actually to be able to get the required votes to be elected into Congress, then their votes are not wasted. It just moves over to their next choice. That candidate's eliminated, and their voters will have their next choices counted. But with surplus votes, the reason why there's surplus votes is because when one candidate is overwhelmingly popular, he might have too many votes, and you don't need too many. You don't need all those votes to be elected. You just need just enough. You just need just enough to reach the quota to be elected into Congress to represent that district. So his surplus votes will be weighted down and retransferred and reallocated based on his supporters' second or third choices to ensure that he only has the required votes needed to win, and his supporters will have a say who else will be elected into Congress to ensure that voters who back popular candidates will be the one with more representation, but the people in the minority will also have a voice in our electoral system as well. And that's really how the policy works. And with multi-seat primary elections, it really does. It evolves our primary elections where more than one candidate can be nominated to advance into a congressional district. I might not be completely for it 100%, but it changes our primaries. States with blanket primaries or states with closed party primaries, parties can run as many candidates as they want to actually if they feel confident that they can win more seats, they're going to run more candidates to that district, but it has to be equal to the number of seats to fill. So if there's like 5 seats to fill in a congressional district, then parties can run at least 5 seats, 5 or less or more, if they're feeling very confident that they can win more seats in that district. And that's really how proportional representation and really how how this policy would work, and would work completely. So diving even deeper into the cost, for any other state, it's a big price tag, like 1 million votes. Not 1 million votes. It would be roughly around $1 million. And a lot of these U.S. territorial islands, even the District of Columbia, that would be about $1,500 million. It has a big, yes, it looks like it has a big price tag completely. Ranked choice voting and single transferable voting, it's not affordable. It's not a cheap electoral system. It's expensive in the short run, but it's only expensive in the short run. But in the long run, it saves money in the long run, and it's far more cost effective than holding a traditional runoff election, simply because under a traditional runoff, it's usually low turnout, and the state and taxpayers have to pay more. They have to pay more for the whole runoff election, like 9 or 3 or 4 weeks prior to the general election, and that's one of the biggest disadvantages to our current electoral system with traditional runoff elections, mainly because it costs the state money, and plus you're requiring voters to vote more than once, and ranked choice voting is a way to ease that. problem, and simply because it saves taxpayer money. It's far more cost effective. Voters only have to vote once, where they rank their ballots, and if one candidate has 50% of the votes, then the candidate wins. But if no one reaches the 50% mark, then we move over to the elimination round, instant runoff round, where we eliminate candidates that have the fewest first choice votes, and their votes will be reallocated based on their supporters' second or third choices. And that's one of the benefits with preferential voting. And in my opinion, it has completely outweighed the cons towards preferential voting, because it saves taxpayer money by a lot in the long run, and also it's far more cost effective and less time consuming, because voters just vote once. They participate in a single high turnout election, and that's it. They're done. They don't have to vote anymore. That's a great thing for our electoral system, because it saves money in the long run. It's far more cost effective in the long run, and it's why states like the state of Georgia, when they passed their new voting law that would institute ranked choice voting for military and overseas voters, it's there to make runoff elections cost effective and less time consuming. And I thought that was a brilliant move. And there has also been a bill by another state senator from the state of Georgia that's looking to actually advance ranked choice voting for all people now, to make it universal for every single Georgian. And that would pretty much gut runoff elections entirely in the Peach State. And that's a great thing, to really make runoff elections far more cost effective and less time consuming, and it saves money in return in the long run. So similar bills to this, and as I explained earlier, the bill would completely get rid of winner-take-all elections to ranked choice voting, to proportional representation. What it would do is it would allow voters to have their voices heard in Congress. You would open up our politics to more people. Republicans would be elected in blue states. Democrats would be elected in red and blue states. Even Republicans would be elected in red and blue states also. And everyone would have a representative that fairly shares their values. And shares their values and the issues that they care about. They can find a party and a representative that will speak on their behalf, that will write laws on their behalf. And that's what our founding fathers wanted. They wanted to have a more reflective Congress, and that principle has been destroyed because of single-member winner-take-all districts, and proportional representation, ranked choice voting will help bring that vision back into our Congress again. And with mandating that each state with 6 or more House members would create multi-member congressional districts, requiring states to construct independent redistricting commissions, not through state legislatures. And supporters really hope it would restore faith in the political system and also reimagine Congress into a better and more functional Congress for decades to come. And that's one of the benefits with ranked choice voting overall, and it has been proposed in the 115th Congress. It was introduced back in June 2017. It didn't pass, but I'll get to that in a later slide. It hasn't been voted on yet, but I am very optimistic about this bill's future and ranked choice voting overall, for the future of ranked choice voting. As more and more Americans become fed up with the duopoly, and they will just want more choice and more voice. They want Congress to be representative to them. They want them to be responsive to their needs and their wants. And voters want another alternative. They want another option to truly build a government that's truly by the people, of the people, and for the people. So go even further, other similar bills that are very similar to the Fair Representation Act, the Redistricting Reform Act of 2019 that was introduced in the 116th Congress, that would require all states to adopt independent redistricting commissions. Other electoral reforms like the For the People's Act that passed the House, but didn't pass the Senate yet. It did pass with some parts of the Senate, but not all of it. And this is all there to pursue fairness in the electoral system, and also to really have fairer representation in the electoral system overall, and to really open up our politics to more and more people. So, and going back to the principle of, as of right now, the bill has a very low chance of being enacted currently, mainly because it's all politics, and plus we're really stuck in the duopoly, the two-party system, and with currently under partisan gerrymander and with our winner-take-all elections, it's going to be hard to move to a system that is a threat to their political power, is a threat to the establishment's power, because they want a system that only benefits their self-interest, that protects their power. And if we implement proportional representation, then their power is reduced, like what happened earlier on in American history. But I'm very positive in the future of ranked choice voting. I'm still optimistic on multi-member district, but I think it's going to take time until we can pass it again, until we can make it the law of the land once more. And really, one of the benefits, I'm very optimistic on ranked choice voting overall, mainly because more and more states are starting to adopt it. The state of Maine was the first state in the union to use it in a presidential election in 2020. Alaska passed it through a ballot initiative in 2020, and they're going to become they're going to be the second state in the union to use it for congressional elections, and for congressional election with alongside their nonpartisan blanket primary, and also but realistically, ranked choice voting started in cities. It started in St. Paul, Minnesota. It started in Portland, Maine. It's used in cities in New Mexico. It's used in many cities in Utah. It's used in 2 cities in the state of California. San Francisco uses ranked choice voting. Santa Fe also uses it, and it has positive engagement from voters. And as more and more states begin to adopt it, I'm very optimistic that ranked choice voting at some point will be the new way we vote for our members of Congress, for president, for generations to come. And some of the drawbacks, this is what so a lot of the critics, what the critics argue is that they say it's too complicated. The person with the most votes could lose, and they say it's because they say that it's undemocratic if the person with the most votes could still lose. Voters might not count if exhausted. They say it even says it violates one person, one vote. Well, it doesn't violate one person, one vote, because when you're ranking the candidates in order of preference, whoever you ranked as number 1 first, that will be your first choice vote. That will be your most favorite candidate. That's a first choice vote. We first count your that one first choice first, and if one candidate has 50% or more of the total votes needed to win, and has 50% of the first choice votes, then the election is over and that candidate wins. But if no one breaks the 50% mark, which usually happens when there's so many candidates in the race, then we begin the process of the instant runoff, where the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated and his supporters will have their next choices counted. And that process continues until one candidate reaches a majority of the vote, reaches 50% or more of the total votes cast to win. And so in this way, it is still one person, one vote. It's one person, one actual meaningful vote, because voters no longer have to vote for the lesser of the 2 evils. They can vote. They are free to vote their conscience in their first choice, and if that one vote doesn't, if their one vote towards that candidate has limited support, their vote isn't wasted or thrown out. It just moves over to the next choice, and their next choice, and their next choice, and they can have an ultimate say. They can use their one vote to have an ultimate say of who ultimately wins. And people say it's too complicated. Well, it's not too complicated. If we look at NYC's mayoral election most recently, 95% of NYC voters they found that ranked choice voting is a simple and intuitive ballot. 77% of New Yorkers want to see ranked choice voting used again for future elections. It all even has positive support from many other supporters. People from the several cities in Utah, Minneapolis, Maine, they like the system better than just voting for one candidate, because they are free to vote their conscience and really free to actually vote their conscience. And if their candidate has limited support, then they can rank other candidates to ensure that they can play a massive role in determining who ultimately wins. And it's actually pretty simple and very easy to a lot of voters, and it has positive reviews by a lot of supporters in every other state. And the fact that they love the system, and they love the system of ranking their candidates instead of voting for one. And also, and people say that the vote might not count if exhausted. Well, that only occurs when voters rank their second or third choices. If one of the candidates that they ranked as second is already eliminated in the instant runoff round, well, yeah, they're pretty much not counted, because the supporter is already eliminated. And that's why it's important to also have a third, fourth, and fifth choice, or sixth choice, or seventh choice, to ensure. So if one candidate is already eliminated in your second or third choice, then we move over to your other choices that you ranked on your ballot, to ensure that your one vote can play a massive role in who wins the election overall. And a lot of the drawbacks is really they do have a point, but it has been proven false time and time again, mainly because it doesn't violate one person, one vote, because it benefits voters, because they no longer are afraid to vote for the lesser of the two evils. It's very easy to a lot of voters, even to NYC voters. And as well, the argument that it's undemocratic, the person with the most votes could lose, to a lot of voters, it's far more democratic. And as well, you cannot win just with a plurality of the vote, with 20 or 30% or 40% of the vote. You need more than 50%. Or you need to appeal to a broader base of support. And what it does is, candidates can't just win with the largest tribe. They need to have they need to appeal to the most broadest base of support, not just their base. They have to stay positive, stick to the issues, and reach across and find common ground with other candidates to form coalitions. It really advantages candidates who can actually form coalitions with other parties, with other candidates, to be able to form a governing consensus to be able to get elected in the public office. And it really changes how you campaign, because it forces you to have a one-on-one dialogue with your opponent's supporters and your opponents also in elections. Because if one candidate has the least amount of support, you can make a play for that candidate's supporters and urge them, hey, if you're not going to vote for me first, rank me second, rank me third, because I will also be representative to your needs, to your wants, to your values. And that's one of the benefits towards ranked choice voting. And it's far more democratic, because in a way it brings us back together. It gives us that incentive to form coalitions, to form a governing mandate. And that's what democracy is. Having discussions, campaigning, going door to door, talking about issues, debating on a lot of policies, and when we go to vote, let's have a voting system where our votes actually count, where our votes are actually meaningful, and that's what ranked choice voting will do, because it ensures that you have that majority that better reflects all people's votes overall in our country. And also, but mostly, what are the biggest effects towards ranked choice voting and proportional representation or multi-member districts is that it will bring meaningful representation to the American people. It opens up our politics to more people. You will see Republicans from every part of the country, from blue states and red states, being elected into Congress. You will see Democrats from red states and blue states being elected into Congress. It opens up our politics to more and more people in the U.S. and it will bring meaningful representation, like what it did to many Americans in Cincinnati, Ohio, and New York City when they used a version of proportional representation back in 1900. That brought massive, meaningful representation. It has led to many women getting elected into city council elections. It really has increased minority representation all in our nation, minorities being represented in our governments. And it really has opened up our politics to innovators. And it really had forced parties and candidates to engage, to have a much more substantive debate on policy and on the issues. And it really has incentivized them to form coalitions and reach across and work across the aisle. And that's something we need more than ever to really reduce the polarization and the zero-sum warfare contest that has been prevalent for so long under our current voting structure. So and lastly, and I know I've talked about this before, the other jurisdictions that use this policy, there was a time in American history where a lot of cities used it. New York City used proportional representation. In Cincinnati, Ohio also used it in the early 1900s. And with that result, it brought a lot of meaningful representation. African Americans were represented in Cincinnati, Ohio City Council. New York City, a lot of minority representation was being heard. They were having a voice. But the main reason why a lot of it got repealed, mainly because the major parties were in this big quest for power, and they saw that proportional representation was a threat to their power. That their power would be removed or reduced in a way that would allow for people, that would allow for groups, parties, and other people in the minority to have a voice on city council, to have a voice in Congress. And that's one of the reasons why why this type of voting system, ranked choice voting, proportional representation, has been gotten rid of, because they saw it as a threat to their own power. And that's one of the reasons why we stick around with the winner-take-all elections, because parties only see it as a means to maximize their party's vote base and not appeal to other parties in order to govern. And it really dates back to the very first time when Virginia adopted winner-take-all elections in the 1700s, during not just the very first presidential election, with the second and the third presidential election, when the state started to adopt winner-take-all elections. And the reason why they did it was mainly because the majority party wanted maximization. They wanted their candidates to have maximized support, and that's why we have winner-take-all elections. Is mainly because they see any other system like proportional representation, they see it as a threat to their power, and they don't want that. They want to be in power for all time, and that's why a lot of the establishment candidates, and that's why the Fair Representation Act currently with multi-member districts why there's less of a chance for it to get enacted, but I'm still positive that we can pass it. But not to get off topic here, other states, the state of Maine uses it, Alaska uses it, Cambridge still uses the system of proportional representation for their city council elections with ranked choice voting, similar to what New York City and Cincinnati, Ohio used to do before. And the city of Cambridge uses this and has resounding success. And there have been other pushes to really advance ranked choice voting in Massachusetts and also other parts of the country. I am very optimistic that ranked choice voting will become a future voting method where we're all going to be using it to elect our elected officials from both state, local, and federal government. But overall, you guys, let me hear your questions in the comment section below, and what you think about the Fair Representation Act, and would it be really something that you would be for to really put an end to zero-sum warfare, to end the partisan gerrymandering, and really to make a Congress that's truly of, by, and for the people, that will reimagine a new government, a government where we foster collaboration, a government that fosters cooperation, a government that fosters bipartisanship, and allowing all voices to be heard, not just the people in the majority, but the people in the minority from every parts of the country being heard. So everyone's wants and needs are being responded to in the legislature. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment down below, and share and start a discussion on fair representation, on the Fair Representation Act, ranked choice voting, multi-member congressional districts, and proportional representation. Because together we can all be agents of change that will truly reimagine a new and brighter future for America for generations to come. So once again, guys, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, this is the Young Centrist, and I am out.